All right. We have another Indiana Jones novel review. It's been a long time since I did one of these. We're going to talk about another Max McCoy novel, Indiana Jones and the Dinosaur Eggs. This is an interesting Indiana Jones book. This is the second of Max McCoy's books, as I said, and we're dealing with a little Crystal Skull stuff, but the primary story is that Indy is tasked by a nun to find this nun's father, who apparently has found fossil Triceratops bones that are not fossilized, meaning that they're still dinosaurs, potentially in Mongolia. So Indy goes there to find this woman's father and get down to the what's actually going on. This book is interesting for a number of things, but not necessarily the plot, although the plot is very fun. This is a continuity book, and unfortunately, it's a continuity error book. A lot of movie continuity is set up in this, so let's get into what I mean by that. A lot of the Temple of Doom stuff in the beginning of Temple of Doom is set up in this book. We have Lao She is introduced. Wuhan, Indy's friend that's killed in the beginning of Temple of Doom, he is introduced in this. This is when Indy and him first meet. Now, I know some of you are going to say, well, no, they met in Emperor's Tomb. Emperor's Tomb is full of continuity errors, but if we go off of the logic that Lucasfilm had for Star Wars, and a lot of the Star Wars continuity rules apply to Indiana Jones as well, video games were secondary canon. So they had met before the events of Emperor's Tomb. So not everything you played was 100% accurate. So anyway, what's harder to explain is the beginning of this book, which I thought was more interesting than the main plot of this book, although the plot is fun. But Belloc is introduced in this book. So there were some big no-nos in the Rob McGregor era, and I'm assuming the Martin Caidin era of Indiana Jones Bantam books, which were that you could not talk about Marion or Abner Ravenwood. You couldn't tell that whole story and the falling out with Abner. And you couldn't talk about Belloc. Why? Because George Lucas had planned to put them in the next season of Young Indiana Jones. I'm kind of glad the third season of Young Indiana Jones didn't happen. But unfortunately, because it didn't happen, George Lucas said, Max McCoy, you can use some of my ideas for this. So, in the Young Indiana Jones episodes that would have had Belloc, there would have been some sort of, I guess Indy and him met in 1922. There's some fallout over a crystal skull, and they were rivals after that. And Belloc's always screwing Indy over, getting the one-up on him, like we see in Raiders. In this book, however, Belloc, it acts like Indiana Jones and him have never met face-to-face before. Very beginning, Belloc's having Indy roughed up by some thugs because Indy tried to steal the crystal skull that has cursed him from the last book. He's trying to get that back to get the curse removed, because he has this curse that if he's like intimate with a woman, that woman will die, and he'll just be cursed for an eternity if he doesn't get the skull back. And Belloc sells it to the Nazis, which this is like the first appearance in the novels of the Nazis and Indy together. like in the same scene. I'm not saying that Indy was a Nazi, but like the Nazis are in this. They aren't the main villain. The main villain's pretty interesting for this one. But they do show up, and I like that it's taken 10 books to get there. Like, sure, we saw them in Sky Pirates, but they were getting the attacked by that weird rich man. But anyway, dinosaur eggs. We know that Belloc and Indy have met before because the Adventures of Indiana Jones Digest comic, the first one, deals with Belloc in 1930, and this takes place in the fall of 33. So they've met before, and in one of the guidebooks, George Lucas made it canon that his not made episode of Young Indiana Jones is canon. So what's going on here? I don't know. It's really hard to explain away. Belloc is clearly drunk or drinking. He's at least drinking. And Indy's been roughed up pretty bad. And maybe there's some, like, they're not remembering things properly. I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird situation to be in. I can't fully explain it away. But anyway. So, the main villain of this goes by the name of General Z. And he's following this fake evil Dalai Lama. And he's a cannibal. Which is pretty flippin' metal. And he wants the dinosaur eggs because they're in the mythology, they're dragon eggs, and it will give them powers. But anyway, that's a whole thing. This book's pretty fun, I will say. And it's got some great continuity, starting to set up things for Temple of Doom and Raiders in this. And I honestly appreciate that more than the story itself. The story itself's pretty fun and enjoyable. It's weird. It gave me a Dinotopia vibe a bit. And if any of you remember back in the 90s, Dinotopia was an IP that was based off of this guy. He was like a paleontologist illustrator, and he at the time illustrated the most scientifically accurate dinosaurs we had ever seen, and he got a lot of fame, and he wrote a picture book called Dinotopia, which ended up becoming this big IP, mainly because of the art. It's just the premise is this: an island cut off from the rest of the human race that survived the asteroid that hit the Earth and wiped the dinosaurs out. If you believe in that theory, dinosaurs evolved with people, and so in the late 1800s, this father and son end up shipwrecked on Dinotopia, and they learn to live with other humans that live with dinosaurs, and some of the dinosaurs can speak English. It's interesting. It's not like they're reptoids or reptilians, but like they're actual dinosaurs, and it's a whole thing. So this has kind of that vibe to it towards the end. I won't explain further, but this book made me want an Indiana Jones Dinotopia crossover. I don't know. It probably exists, and it's probably horrible. But much like how Dinotopia kind of fell apart once they made that horrible made-for-TV movie, and then the subsequent terrible TV show in the early 2000s, and ruined the IP. Although it's kind of not made a comeback, but they're printing books again. Not new ones, they're reprinting things for it. Which I wish that they reprinted these Indiana Jones books. Because these Indiana Jones books, and I'm going to get off on a little tangent here with Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is becoming one of the hardest things to collect. a lot of these books are going up in value because they've only been printed once or twice, which I didn't realize. This version of Dinosaur Eggs is a reprint because I looked in the back, in the front book right here, and it has lists of all the other Indiana Jones titles that were done by Bantam, and including Hollow Earth and Secret of the Sphinx, which came out after this book, and I was like, that's weird. But yeah, no, they reprinted these in 2008 for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Because this came out in 96. So the young Indiana Jones was done at this point. And George Lucas was kind of giving up on Indiana Jones. This is when Dark Horse stopped making Indiana Jones comics. It was right around this time. So we got like 2 more Max McCoy books, and then it was donezo for Indiana Jones. And I think it's really sad because these books, like, say what you will about the premise, because it's really weird. And like a weird nod to Jurassic Park, Dinotopia-esque, whatever. It feels like an Indiana Jones movie. This feels more like an Indiana Jones movie than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or Dial of Destiny ever did. Like, there is something about the way Max McCoy writes Indiana Jones and structures the adventures that feels like something like Temple of Doom or Raiders. This gets pretty graphic. It leans more towards Temple of Doom. But that's okay, because Temple of Doom's only like a year and a half removed from this. Because this is the end of 33, and we're getting into 34 with the next book. But these are so good, these Max McCoy indie books. Now, can you read this on its own? Yes, but the bookends, the Crystal Skull, are going to be a little confusing for people. I recommend reading Philosopher's Stone first. But you could read these Max McCoy Indiana Jones books and be like satisfied and done with Indiana Jones. Like, you wouldn't have to read any Rob McGregor or Martin Caidin books. You just read the Max McCoy books and you would get a lot out of them. They're very good. They're well worth your time. I have to look at this more objectively, simply because, like, this has been contradicted, and it has one of the bigger contradictions in the indie timeline with the whole Belloc thing. And we know it is for sure Renee Belloc, not his twin, which, yes, there is a twin Belloc, and there's a son Belloc, but it's neither of them. This is Renee Belloc. But that's not Max McCoy's fault. That's a George Lucas fault. So I can't take away from that. I give this a solid 4.5 out of 5. It's well worth your time to check out. If you're a little on the more squeamish side, there's some gross stuff in here that I would caution you about before you jump in. But it's nothing too grotesque. There's some grotesque subject matter, but that's a little different. So, anyway, have a nice day.